Welcome to DowerChin.com. Today we're going to be taking a look at another product from StarTech. This is actually a RAID enclosure. This is StarTech's USB 3 dual 3.5-inch SATA HDD RAID enclosure with UA, SP, and fast charge USB hub. It's a mouthful, but what it boils down to, it's a RAID enclosure. What that really means is this thing supports 2 hard drives in it, and the ability to basically have it set up so it can be redundant or use it as a stripe system, so you can have 2 times the storage from 2 disks. So if you saw my previous reviews about the Western Digital MyBook Duo, I guess it would be on par with something like that. So let's take a look at it. Since I replaced my Duo hard drives recently with bigger ones, I'll take those 2 drives and I'll put it in here, because this doesn't come with drives. This actually just comes with this enclosure. We'll take a look at it, open it up, and put the drives in, see how it works. Okay, so let's take a look at what's inside the box. Alright, we can see you have the US power cable over here. And oops, there's the power brick. And let's see, pull this out. We've got some cables tucked over here. We have the, looks like the Asian or UK power supply. I think this is the European style. And a unit over here. And then inside the box we have the USB 3 cable and a manual. Alright. And the unit itself. Let's take these out. Alright, it's actually really small. It's actually smaller than I would have suspected, but I guess it doesn't need to be really large. Alright, so here's the unit. So we see in front here, we have 2 USB 3 ports here, some lights, power button, not much else on the side. Got some rubber feet at the bottom here. We have looks like a fan, toggle setting for the type of RAID you want, USB 3, and the power. Yes, it is really small. So let's take a look. These are the drives I'm going to be putting in. These are my Western Digital Reds that I took out of my previous enclosure, and so you can see that it's about the size of, well, it easily fits the hard drives. It's pretty much not much bigger than the hard drives themselves. So this is really interesting. So let's go and crack this guy open, put the drives in, and give it a shot. Okay, so here I have the enclosure, and we're going to basically put my drives in it. So these are the 2 drives I had from my Western Digital MyBook, and they still have the numbers on them, 1 and 2, which is going to be convenient for this. So, alright, so I open it up. The manual says to kind of lift up from here, and put this to the side. And we see inside there, there's no trays to pull out or any screws to work with, and there's nothing to put on the screw holes on the drive, which is great. So let's see, we're gonna put them in, and since they're labeled 2 and 1, we'll just follow along with the drives this way. Here, I'll put 2 on top, and so it fits right in. It kind of just clicks into the SATA connector on the back. Same thing here. Put this one in like so. There it is. I hear to click in. So there they are. So they're in. They're pretty secure. They have a little bit of play back on this side, but I don't think this is going to cause any problems. And I'll put this back on. It's a little groove over here. Everything slides into. Okay. And there it is. Now, the settings back here, they say, is you have the options of going with JBOD, combined mirroring, and striping. And what I'm really one that I'm mostly concerned about is mirroring, because I want the drives to basically replicate themselves, and in case of one drive failure, I don't want any data loss. So once that's selected over here, we have to put the power in, and they say that once you power it on, hold the set button while you power it on, and it will basically initialize the array for you, or at least set it up anyway, and then it should appear just as one drive on the computer system. So I'm going to go and do that. I didn't plug it in. I didn't put the power adapter in. It's right here. I haven't put it in yet. So we'll put that in, and we'll set the mode, and we'll put it on a computer, and we will initialize it and put it through a test. Okay, so here I have my Surface Pro 3, and I'm going to basically take the USB connector and plug it in. Alright, so I did the little chime there, and it's trying to set up the device driver here. What else is down here? So it's line 2 of them. So let's see what's happening. We'll let these finish up and see what happens. Well, actually, in the meantime, I'm going to just go look real quick. I'm going to basically go and see, go to manage. Let's see what it sees under the disk management. Alright, so sees must initialize the disk before logical operations can access it. That is disk 2. Well, I'm going to go and I'm going to basically use the default. So it's like the GPT by default. I'll just use that. I'll just use that. Okay, so it looks like it's accessing the drive. And indeed, disk 2 is here, and it is 1.862 gigabytes of storage, which is usually typical for about under 2 gigabytes, under 2 terabytes. So each drive was 2 terabytes. So after 4 minutes, about what it looks like. So all right, it sees the disk as one drive instead of 2 disks, which is what we want. And I'm going to make a new simple volume out of it. And I'll just take the whole disk up and assign it to drive letter E. And I'll stick with, actually, I'm going to change to exFAT, not NTFS, only because if I want to take it over to, like a Mac, NTFS isn't going to be writable. Finish that off. After a few moments of formatting, there we are. I called my drive RAID as E drive now. So if I minimize this and over to the device drive is apparently still installing, but in the meantime, if I make this little window a little smaller so it fits on the screen here, it's got an E drive. I can see it, and the properties. All right, there it is. I have 1.8 terabytes free. The drive looks like it works. So great. So now what I'm going to do is I'll copy some files onto it, and then we'll just start sabotaging it and see how it recovers. But first I'm going to turn the video off because I want these device drivers to finish installing and see if there's any difference that it makes. Okay, so here I have my Surface Pro 3, and we have the StarTech RAID enclosure here. I'm going to plug this in to the device. And what I did beforehand is I plugged into another system before and I put some videos on here. So we'll turn this on. And you see it's got some very bright LEDs here. And once it's done spinning up, you'll see that the 2 drives in here, there's actually, because the 2 drives here, you see that the lights will blink red. And each one for drive 1 or drive 2 shows activity between the both of them. So it's kind of very interesting that it does that. So it shows that. So what I did is I threw some videos on here. Some of my other videos and my review videos here, for example. So I'll play them back from the device. I'm playing them back from the drive itself. So you can see that the videos play back from the device. So you see that it does work. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to simulate drive failures. And we'll see if, well actually once I start pulling things out, it's going to simulate drive failures. What I'm going to do with those is let's make sure that I'm supposed to have these 2 drives mirrored. Let's go take a look and see if they are indeed mirrored. So I'm going to eject this thing, and we will hook up one of my other little devices I have from StarTech and take a look. So I'll turn this off. I'll put this to the side. So, alright, I'll be right back. I'm going to get the other things set up and we will take a look at the drives. So, what I have here, once again, is the enclosure. I forgot, this is not a StarTech. I have another one that's a StarTech, but this is my Initech. It's a dual drive dock, so I'm going to have it hooked up to my Surface here. I'll move that over in a minute. But let's just pull the drives out and see what happens. So I'm going to take just 2 out. And I'm going to mount it in here. To the side here. Let that spin up. And what should happen is I should see that I should make sure that so once again it opened right up. I see that I have videos on here. So it's reading the videos from this drive. So that's great. So I know that the data has been duplicated, or at least on drive 2. Let's go and look at drive 1. So this is a dual drive dock, so I can plug both of them in. So I'm going to take this one out. I'm going to put this one in here. Yeah, and wait for that one to mount. Give it a moment there. So I found it, and it should pop open in a minute. Alright, so let's see. Well, actually, you know what? It came with E drive again. That's not what I want. So let's make sure. Let me eject the other one just to make sure. I'm going to pull that one out. Alright, so I got that one out of the way. And make sure that's up. Alright, so there. So this drive came in, and once again I see the videos. I can play the same video back. Alright, so you can see that video is playing. So that's great. So both drives have the same data on it, which is exactly what I want. Because if in the case one of them fails, I want to make sure my data is on the other one. So that's great. So let's plug them back in, or at least plug one of them back in, and let's see what kind of statuses we get on the drive for a RAID failure. So alright, I'm going to close this down, eject this guy out, because you always want to make sure you eject the disks properly. You don't want to just yank them if you don't need to. So eject that. We'll pull this guy out, and we'll put disk 1 back in. Alright, so I'm gonna reset up, and we'll put the drives in, and we will see what happens. Alright, so I put drive 1 back into the enclosure, and so we're going to turn it on and see what the LEDs tell us. So if you can see here, okay, so it flashed red to try to read drive 1. Drive 2's light is off, and here we go. So now we have a red light indicating drive 2 is not available. So it indicates that, and this R light over here is an indicator that a repair is needed. So it's solid. So that basically means that by looking at this, we have power. Drive 1 is okay. Drive 2 is missing or not working, and the R light, which is basically, I think it stands for repair, or the RAID light, is on. So it means that we need to worry about doing something with the RAID. Now let's see if everything works. I should be able to plug this back in, and I should be able to at least see my files. And there you see the files are available. So it still works, even though I have a drive failure. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to plug it back in, or at least plug drive 2 back in, and see what it does for rebuilding the RAID. So I'm going to basically eject the drive, because still the good thing to do is eject the disk. So I'll go down here, find my USB interface, and I will eject the drive. And so now it's safe to remove. And I'm going to power this guy down and put the second drive in. There we go. Okay, so it's in there now. So let's power this back on and see what happens. So got two blue lights right now, which so it indicates that it found both drives. Okay, so here, so being plugged in still, it mounted, and I'm able to get to my files. Now the RAID light is solid, so it means that it's got to do some rebuilding. And indeed, what's happening now is all of these three LEDs are flashing. And it took me a little bit to figure out, because the manual that comes with the device doesn't really talk too much about about it. So this menu here basically says for more details go online, and StarTech's website does have a better manual, but the chart for the LEDs doesn't really quite give me a very clear picture. It took me a little bit to figure it out, but so obviously the red lights flashing here means both drives are in read-writing mode, and then this flashing R over here indicates that the disk is basically in repair mode. And so now what I'm seeing here now is all the lights are off except for the power, and the red light has stopped flashing. So what does that mean? Oh, there you go. So now I noticed that it does this a few times. So it's going to go on and off a few times while it's rebuilding. So typical RAID rebuilds I've had experience with is I've seen 500 gigabyte hard drives take about 40 minutes to an hour to rebuild, and these are 2 terabyte hard drives, and these I'm gonna guess that it might take about 2 hours to rebuild. Now I should be able to do, you know, what they say that while this is rebuilding, I can still access my files, so I can still read the disk, you know, read the videos that are on here. So as you can see, I can still read my files while I was still doing the work. Now it seems like it stopped doing the work for a little bit while I was doing some work or using the drive, and it's going to continue working on its own, which is nice. So the rebuild process won't disrupt your work, but it's probably a good thing to let it go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to eject the drive here, and I should be able to just disconnect it, and it should just go and do its thing. So I'm going to eject it, so safely remove hardware. So I'm going to unplug this. I'm going to turn this off for now, and we'll move this over here. And it's probably going to take a while to build, and it's late right now for me, so I'm going to let this go, and I'll check on this in the morning. And once it's all done, it should look like this. And so I really don't think it's done just yet, but I'll leave it alone and let it do its thing, and we'll check on it in the morning. And yep, so it's still working, and still doing its little thing. So we'll let it go overnight. I'll check it in the morning, and we'll see what the results are. Okay, so I let the enclosure build overnight. It was getting late anyway, and so I let the device crank away. So I really can't say exactly how long it took, but I'm guessing it probably took maybe 3 hours possibly to rebuild. I know that the capacity of the drives does kind of affect how long it takes to rebuild a drive. In my experience, so usually about a 500 gigabyte hard drive takes about 40 minutes to an hour to rebuild, so this may have taken 2 to 3 hours to rebuild. So the lights were flashing last night back and forth while I was working, and this R light over here is actually the rebuild light, and when it's blinking it shows that the drives are being rebuilt. So I'm going to plug this back in onto my system here, and let's take a look at the results. Oh, there we go. All right, so this thing was asleep. Now the drives spin up. You see the LED lights. They're flashing, showing that it's accessing, and a window pops up with the videos that I originally had on the drives. So if I pull one up, see, they'll start playing, so it knows that it's accessing them. So it was very interesting to see that the red light flashes over here. And actually, I'm not sure if you can see with how bright these lights are. The red light is actually blinking on drive 1. So it shows that it's accessing the data off of drive 1. So it doesn't actually need to read from drive 2 at all while it's working on this. So that's very interesting. So let's copy some files on it real quick and let's see what the drive lights do. So I'll take some PDFs over here, I'll drag them over, and you'll see now what's happening is both lights were flashing. So it shows that the enclosure was actually writing the data while it was copying over here. It wrote the data to both drives. So we know that they're being replicated. So there you have it. It's a very nice little enclosure. It does what it needs to do. The LED indicators show what's happening, which is great. The one thing I want to show, one last thing before we go, is that one of the special things about this enclosure is these 2 USB ports, which are also fast charge ports. The nice thing about it is, in this situation with the Surface Pro 3, once again you're stuck with only one USB 3 port, but because it goes to this guy, these two act as additional ports that you can use to run devices through it. Or, like say for example, I got a thumb drive. I can simply plug this in if I can get the alignment right for it. There we go. And it spins it up, and up, my window opens. So it shows that this drive is now mounted through here, so I can copy files to it if I want to. Then also, I can use the spare port, for example, to run my lightning cable, so I can charge my device. So if I plug this in, if I get, I can never align these things right. Okay, there we go. All right, so now I can plug my iPad mini, for example, over here in. And it shows that it's now charging. And also at the same time, it popped open and asked me what I want to do with my iPad mini. So if I were to unlock my iPad mini, you still notice the iTunes launches and wants me to download an update. I don't want to do it yet. I don't want to install anything else yet. But if I want to, I can then have access to iTunes and look for my device. If I can find my device in the list here. There's my iPad mini. So I can look in the apps and move files to and from, any movies or music I have on the device. So it allows it to pass through. So in this kind of situation where I really only have one port, I can have my RAID controller here, a RAID controlled drive, with 2 extra ports, so I can either add more drives or charge my devices at the same time. So it's very cool. So there you have it, a look at StarTech's USB 3 RAID enclosure with fast charge. If I had to say anything that was kind of negative about it, is, well, the lights are really, really bright. I don't think they need to be that bright, but they're pretty bright. So if you have any questions about this enclosure, or things that I may not have done, or things you want me to try doing, please let me know. And please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.